Greetings, everyone. A while back, I had been approached by one Kenshin who wanted to do a podcast with me about the brony and anti-brony communities. Having spent a lot of time interacting with anti-bronies and not seeing a lot of attention being given to their issues, he suggested that I take part in a podcast where we could have a calm and understanding discussion on the disagreements between our communities. I felt really good about the conversation we had, but I was honestly more interested to see what sort of discussion would arise in the comments. I knew that the majority of the audience would consist of bronies, and I was curious about how they would react listening to Kenshin's concerns. And for the most part, I was pleased to see that a lot of people were being polite and empathetic, even when Kenshin was replying to their comments directly. Now, there were some exceptions here and there. I saw a number of people who seemed more interested in creating an argument rather than understanding a new point of view. It was disappointing to see, but thankfully the majority of the comments were positive. In fact, I saw a lot of people talking about how thankful they were that Kenshin was being calm and collected during the podcast. It seemed as though a lot of their expectations were being exceeded. And afterwards, I chatted with Kenshin about his thoughts on people's reactions, and something we were discussing really stuck with me. Just how often can people be blinded by a title, even just marginally so? There were many comments from people touching on how surprised they were about Kenshin's demeanor. And there were even some bronies that managed to exceed Kenshin's expectations. But I noticed a lot of people relating their personal experiences between these communities before, talking about how the other bronies or anti-bronies they've met were not the best examples of their communities. And it occurred to me that this may actually be the main issue between bronies and anti-bronies. The members of each community that seem to be the most vocal, the most defensive, or even the most aggressive are actually the minority. But those same people seem to get the most attention, which again has more to do with the fact that they don't feel the need to hold back their opinions when they see points of conflict online. Now, in my case, I used to be someone who didn't get involved at all. I'd observe constantly, but never give my own opinions. I would come across a lot of interesting discussions and ideas from others online, but not make the effort to include myself in the conversation. Nowadays, I realize just how much of a difference I've made by having the confidence to express myself here on YouTube. And I think this very much applies to how bronies and anti-bronies tend to view each other's communities. I'll bet there are plenty of people who listen to that podcast, who, just like how I used to be, observed and gained new perspective without joining the conversation. There were thousands of hits on that podcast video, but only hundreds of comments, with a lot of people posting multiple comments. We were only seeing the opinions of those who had the confidence to submit their own thoughts. Not everyone does. But I think if we can encourage more people to join the conversation, that both communities will begin to understand that the few people they've encountered before do not represent their communities as a whole. I know that this has been an issue for both bronies and anti-bronies. There are plenty of people who form their opinions based only on a few experiences. But we need to remember that the ones who get the most attention tend to also be the most vocal, the most defensive, or even the most aggressive people in their respective communities. We are being blinded by a title. Perhaps only marginally so, but this really is the case. A lot of people from both communities fall into this trap. We see an extensive argument in certain cases and start to assume that a lot of other bronies and anti-bronies must be the same way. So, how do we change this? We become the example. We show our respective communities that we are not represented only by the most vocal, the most defensive, and the most aggressive. I have been encouraging others to speak their minds and share their opinions on every one of my videos. And I can imagine that just like how I used to be, there are still many others out there who don't feel as though their words could make a real difference. Or worse, that no one would even care if they said anything in the first place. I want to emphasize just how much of a difference it made when I decided to share my thoughts. And more importantly, when I decided to learn more about members of the anti-brony community. I've had several conversations with Kenshin since we recorded that podcast together. And we've both managed to surprise each other with how much effort we've put in on understanding the many perspectives of both communities. While I fully realize that there really are anti-bronies who seem to put a lot of focus on starting up another flame war, I hope everyone remembers that there are bronies in our community who do those same things. And just as there are many of us who have formed our opinions of the anti-brony community based solely upon their most vocal, defensive, and aggressive members, there are many anti-bronies out there who have formed their opinions of the brony fandom based solely on those same reasons. It may not be so much because of ignorance on anyone's part, but rather, people just haven't been given the opportunity to meet those who aren't looking to start up a flame war. I, for one, have made the effort to reach out, and thus far, I've been seeing a lot of good results. But in order to make some real headway, I'm going to need a lot more help. Our fandom deserves a better image, and we can't get that without more people making that genuine effort to be better examples. Don't let yourself be blinded by a title. Anti-brony does not automatically refer to someone who just wants to start up another flame war. I, for one, don't believe that the main issue between our communities stems from a difference of ideologies, though that is a concern. The main issue I see is that both communities seem to focus on those few members who get the most attention. And really, such people are actually the minority. I hope that each and every one of us will ponder these things the next time we have a chance to be an example. And I hope that some of you out there who feel as though their words really wouldn't make a difference, they can. And you can. I would like to hear your thoughts on these ideas, whether it may be something that you agree or disagree with. I want to see more people take part in the conversation. And remember, it may not just be for your sake, but perhaps may also show others that the brony community is not what they expected it to be. Until next time, I am DRWolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.